Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Brennan, welcoming you to another edition of Honolulu on the Move, the show that brings you the latest news and information about the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. You know, members of our project team have been working hard the past several months, designing and developing the rail stations that our rail passengers will use. And here to discuss with me more in detail this month about the rail stations and their designs is the chief architect of the project, Mr. Ken Caswell. Ken, thanks for joining us again this month. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, aloha. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, you and I have been talking about this for a couple months running, not on this show necessarily, but off camera, and I'm surprised at just how much goes into the development and design of our rail station. Give our viewers some idea of all that's really involved in this.
Well, Bill, we actually have been working on the station design for several years now, and we have a whole host of consultants working on the 21 stations. Most of the consultants working on the program are local consultants to the extent of their experience, and we have a lot of technical aspects to deal with. Obviously, we're dealing with stations that have boarding platforms that are on an elevated rail system. And so we have lots of different kinds of issues to deal with, both from a structural standpoint, from a code standpoint, and from an accessibility standpoint.
Yeah.
So we are working with all our local officials to make certain that the stations are not only efficient from a use standpoint, but also are very cost effective and are optimized in terms of the size, in terms of the way everything works, and of course we're incorporating a lot of aesthetic features, many of which we're going to talk about today.
Yes, exactly. And you mentioned to me that we have several programs that go into the design of our rail stations. I know last month we talked about the Art in Transit program, which is just one of many programs that you and your consultants and staff work with. Can you give us some idea of the range of programs that are involved in our station design?
Yes, in discussing the stations with the HART Chief Executive Officer Dan Grabauskas, he was saying that, you know, Hawaii is a unique place, and we want to have unique features in our stations. And so I developed a series of what I call programs. And a program is something that occurs in each and every station for 21 times. For example, we have what we call an aesthetic column program, where we have columns under the stations that are going to have images that are cast into the concrete that reflect some of the historical and cultural and other features of where the actual station is located. We'll also have a station naming program where we have a group of citizens who will form a committee that will come up with suggestions for naming the stations. Currently, what we're calling the stations is simply a working name that we had to put something on the drawing, so we just chose a name of what we thought might work well on a temporary basis. But each station will have a Hawaiian name that's based on cultural research and some of the things that actually happen in the vicinity of where the station is located. Also in the stations we have what we call an interpretive signage program, which is primarily educational. This will be photographs or images or pictures along with graphics and text and things to explain a lot of what we're talking about in terms of the cultural and history of the area. So we are bringing in many of the documents, much of the research, and we'll have a display that has some verbiage that people can walk up to, whether they're local citizens or whether they're visitors or what have you, and read about what happened in this location. We also have what we call a station paving program. In front of each station we have plazas. Inside of the station as well as outside in the plaza, we'll have certain images that will be engraved in the concrete, again, that are cultural and historical based. Obviously, last week we talked about the art program, where we're going to have artwork that is will not only be in the station but also up on the platform. We talked, for example, the windscreens where we'll have
Right.
lay flowers at each station, and each and every station will be recognized by the particular large-scale image of the lays that we have as you enter the platform, and you can see this from the rail vehicle. And then finally we have what we call a standardization, a system-wide standardization program, where we bring into the design the same kind of components each and every station. Our major components such as stairs, elevators, escalators, all of those will be similar. Obviously there's going to be some cost-effective features in,
Sure.
buying products and having designs that are very similar. And the patrons will be able to recognize how to use the stations because everything will be the same one station to the other. Obviously each station differs a little bit because of the site characteristics and so forth, but in this particular case all the stairs will be the same, all the elevators and so forth will all be the same.
So people will have some familiarity with the ability to use any station.
Correct.
that
The sign is the directional signage as you enter the station to go up the escalators to the platform above grade. All the signage will be the same station, same signage in every station.
Right. Now, it sounds like you've done a really lot of research into cultural significance of places and their relationship to the location of our stations. What kind of things guide you in that research?
Well, we've developed a series of documents, and we had several different researchers working on these various documents, what we would call cultural and historical-based documents. One example is the Design Language Pattern Book.
Yes.
Where this will be used or is being used as a guide by the designers to incorporate some of the historical features and some of the patterns that we find in our culture. They're able to use that and gain an understanding of how to create different kinds of things within the station that is recognizable in terms of features, whether it be embellishment or whether it be architectural form or whatever the case might be. This particular document was developed by a local architect, Dan Chung. Some of the other historical related documents were developed by Kepa Mali, and we use these extensively in extracting the information so that we can include that in an interpretive manner. Mm-hmm. When we start to include all these programs that I just mentioned. We use this historical research in order to make certain that there's some accuracy in what we're doing.
Right, right. You also mentioned it at the top when we were listing the certain programs, the column aesthetics, how you're going to incorporate some art and interpretive work in some of the columns along the railway station.
Yeah, this is a fairly unique type of program that we had. As I mentioned earlier, at each station there is a series of different kinds of things that happen from a historical standpoint, both ancient history as well as near-term history. And our designers have taken this research and include different kinds of things in the columns that will be embossed in the surface. And that surface, what we see here, is a image of what a column looks like at a typical guideway. These will be under the station. There's usually 6 columns under the station. And on the upper right is a test casting of one of the images to see how it was going to work in the concrete and this kind of thing. So what we're doing, we're taking this research and we're going to emboss these into these columns. And so again, each station will have these embossing, and every station will be different because of what happened at that particular station from a historical standpoint. Will be reflected, whether it's for example, in the near-term history, we have certain kind of agricultural activities that were taking place. Our designers are including those kinds of things in the embossing on these particular columns.
It sounds like, as you say, that we're incorporating many different kinds of programs in our station design, where I think probably in other cities maybe one or two of these programs are used. Am I reading that right? Do we have like more than the normal amount
I think that
because of our unique place here?
you're exactly right. In my experience, you'll find, for example, that a rail station will have an art program, or they might have a historical and cultural signage program and an art program, and maybe two of the 6 kinds of things. Again, some of the things, of course, are such as a standardization program. That's something probably that you may see in many of the stations
Sure.
that people have ridden across the world. But having 6 of these programs, I think, is fairly unique
Right.
for a transit system of this scale.
Well, I think our passengers will, be able to consider themselves fortunate to have such neat kind of rail stations.
Yeah.
What's important to those of us, because this is the first rail system here in Hawaii, certainly in Honolulu. A lot of people have never had the opportunity to ride rail transit. Can you give us some idea then of how is it that our passengers will use these stations that we're designing?
Well,
How do I get to a station to open with?
we are integrating as much as we possibly can all modes of transportation to provide access to the stations. Obviously, we're going to work very closely with our bus operations. We have a bus rail interface plan where we're integrating the bus routes. We're adjusting bus routes to make certain that people can easily get from their neighborhoods to the station entry structures with as much ease as possible. So we'll have more buses circulating through the neighborhoods. We have bus transit centers at many of the stations. We'll have parking facilities. In the case of one of the stations, we'll have a 1,600 car parking garage. In one of the other stations, we'll have a 1,000 car surface parking lot and parking in several other locations, total of about 4,200 spaces that we're adding.
Right. Let's take a look at we put together a model of the Westlock rail station out in the Waipahu area, and you can see from the video that we're going to show here just how you arrive at a station, and maybe you can talk us through how it is we navigate our way up to the platform and basically catch the train.
Well, essentially all the stations, as I mentioned earlier, are very similar in regards to the way they're laid out. But in this particular case, in this model, what we're doing here is looking at what we call the fare gate entry module. And this module is exactly what it says. You can purchase a ticket as seen, or you can have a monthly pass, just as we commonly have, and go through the fare gate module into the area where the escalators, as you see, and elevators go up to one of the upper levels, and that access the platform. We have a concourse level as well as some bridges that go across the highway. Typically, you'll find that the platform, as we see here, is usually in the middle of the roadway, and that kind of experience is designed to provide as direct as possible access to the platform as we possibly can. So you essentially go into the fare gate module, you go up to a level, and then you get on the train, whether it's Ewa bound or Koko Head bound, depending on which direction you want to go, downtown or in the Kapolei direction.
That's what I was going to say. On either, you can enter from two sides at most of the stations, depending on what train you want to catch, going east and west or west and east.
Depending on site limitations and other real estate issues, most of the stations will have a way to get up to both sides of the platform. We have, in the case of the Westlock that we were just looking at, we have both a Makai and a Maka side. This here is the Maka side of the station, where again you go up to a concourse or bridge level, cross the road over to the boarding platform. Again, many of the bridges will also be a part of our standardization program, or they will be very similar. And this is a view of the rail car that is berthed at the platform, and it shows how the patrons would get on the rail car. I might add that one of the things that the model was showing is that we will have what we call platform screen gates, or barriers that will provide a measure of safety, so that patrons will not stand the risk of maybe perhaps stepping off the platform, or maybe anything rolling off the platform onto the railway.
Now we have we've just concluded recently a meeting with some of the folks out there in the Waipahu area about the stations, 3 stations planned in their area, and we have more meetings planned coming up, and I'm sure by the time we're all done with this, have talked to everybody about every station that we're going to build. But for now, what is it that you're showing the folks at the meeting?
Well, we had meetings some years ago, and
Yes, I remember
then
those.
we were able to look at the stations and make them more efficient, and we went back to the community and presented the refined designs, in this case of the Farrington Station Group, which includes 3 stations. And we wanted the community to be fully familiar with not only the way the stations worked, as I just explained, but we also wanted to show them how we incorporated a lot of the comments that they had made when we did the initial set of community meetings back a few years ago.
Right.
And so not only did we incorporate some of the features and some of the comments and some of the preferences that the community had, we were also able to make the stations more efficient, more cost effective. And an example of what we'll be showing them are some, not only the model, we'll have we had the model at the presentation,
Right.
but we also had renderings that shows close-up views of some of the things that we saw. For example, the West Lock, what we call the Maka entry. Again, this is a view of the Farragut entry module that we talked about on the model.
Right.
You can see here the plaza in the front. In the plaza is where I talked about the program where we'll have the decorative paving and so forth. And you can see how the roof over the escalators and elevator go up to these upper levels and access the boarding platform, which is beyond at the back of the view there.
Okay.
We also had images of the Waipahu station, which is next to the existing Hikimoi Transit Center. And it is very similar to the West Lock station in that it has the same entry module. Again, recognition and ease of use is very important to us. And so we showed them renderings of the Waipahu station. Again, it works similar to what we have seen before.
I see there on the bottom right a bicycle rack.
Yeah, we have, we're working with a Department of Planning and Permitting to make certain that we connect to bike trails and other bikeways that we are currently studying. And we will have bike racks. Typically, the bike racks have closed circuit television coverage for obviously some security reasons. But we can, we have an area for bikes, and we can expand the bike racks if necessary.
Sure.
So we encourage, again, as I said earlier, all modes of transportation. We have a bus, automobile, handy van, bikes, and of course we have pedestrian access as well, and we're working trying to find ways to get sidewalks improved and other pedestrian trails that might connect to commercial centers or other development that might be occurring in the vicinity of the station.
And the third station then that we talked about at the meeting was the Leeward Community College station. Now this one's going to be a little different than some of our other ones.
Yeah, Leeward is a very interesting station in that it is the only station out of the 21 stations that has a platform that is at grade. All the other platforms are elevated.
Yes.
Because the rail is elevated. The rail where the vehicles will come down to grade because we need to enter the maintenance and storage facility, which is adjacent to the campus.
Yes.
And so this particular station will have, it's at the north end of the campus, and the concept that the design consultant used was to have a very prominent lighted, if you will, kind of a beacon, if you want to call it that, because that end of the campus is at the end of the parking lot, and it's a little bit remote to some of the campus buildings. In this particular view, the campus is off to the right, as well as the parking is off to the upper right. And that structure that you see will be lit so that it will be recognizable from the extreme side of the campus, and the lighting conditions that we have also provides a measure of security and
Sure.
safety for the students who might be using the station during after hours and at night. Our stations will be open for revenue service from 4 o'clock in the morning till midnight.
Yes, yes. Now, we had that very successful meeting with the Farrington Highway Station Group. The next meeting that you folks plan to hold for residents to learn about their stations and to provide some input about their stations is for the stations that are further EVA of where we just talked about.
Bill, our next meeting that we'll have, that we'll be presenting a station design to the community, will be in East Kapolei at Kapolei Holly. We'll be presenting the East Kapolei and the UH West Wahoo station, and that'll be on Tuesday, July the 30th. We'll start registration at 6 o'clock, and then we'll start the presentation at 6:30. And we'll be entertaining any questions, comments, or any kind of issues that the community has on their mind, and hopefully can address any questions or concerns. And our ultimate goal, of course, is to try to incorporate any comments in the station design to the extent possible and practical. So we encourage the community to show up on Tuesday, July 30th.
You know, I know you've been very involved in this over the past several years. Tell me professionally, as an architect, as the chief architect of this particular project, some of the more stimulating, challenging things that you find with this station design and station development for this project.
In my particular case, I've had the opportunity to work on lots of different kinds of building types. Over the years, I've worked on lots of government projects. I've worked on some large-scale commercial projects such as convention centers and federal prisons and hospitals and this kind of thing. This type of project requires it is very challenging, and it requires a little bit of everything you've learned over the years. It technically is very complex. From an architectural standpoint, there are numerous issues, code-related issues that come up, and it takes a lot of interaction and interface because of the systems that we have to incorporate to make these trains run. Additionally, we want to concentrate on providing a level of amenity and aesthetic quality. While it can't be overstated or overdone or expensive, it still has to be a level of quality so that the patrons will enjoy using the stations. Many or most of our patrons will be using the stations on a day-by-day basis.
Right.
Obviously, we have a tourist component that people will come in. We want anyone coming from outside who perhaps are riding other systems to recognize that we have a unique situation, that we're very proud of what we're doing here, and that it's going to be able to compete with any rail system throughout the world.
Yes.
So incorporating all those features and working with the numerous entities that we have to work with is an extremely challenging situation. And it takes a lot of lots of energy, lots of imagination,
A little patience.
and a good deal of patience to make certain that everything is incorporated with the level of quality that we're interested in achieving.
And what's the one thing you hope that our residents and the folks who attend our meetings take away from those meetings?
I think that the important thing for the community is to have a level of comfort that what HART is doing is attempting to understand and cater to their needs, cater to their preferences, their desires, and this kind of thing, and make certain that the stations, which do have some architectural presence, that the stations are very much a part of the community, and that they feel that when they use the stations, that it's a safe, secure, and a well-maintained environment.
Ken Caswell, thanks very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
And thank you.
You know, we try to make it very easy for you to stay in touch and keep informed about our project. Let's show you a few ways that you can do that. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on our next Honolulu on the Move show, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. Just two of the places where you can stay informed with up-to-date information on the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. And you can view our latest project videos on YouTube or Vimeo. If you'd like more information on the project or would like a presentation to your group or organization, give us a call at our project hotline at 566-2299. Or contact us via our website at honolulutransit.org. By the way, we've redesigned our project website. Visitors to honolulutransit.org will find it a more colorful, interactive, and user-friendly site. You'll be able to keep up with the latest news and information about the project, important meeting dates, times, and locations, and examine the official documents that are guiding the project's planning and construction. Take some time to visit the new and improved honolulutransit.org. And don't forget that you can also join us here every Sunday night at 4:30 p.m. on Olelo Channel 54. For all of us on the project team, mahalo for joining us today, and we'll see you again next time for another edition of Honolulu on the Move.